why don't you tell me both, just like, who are you, what's your role at Chicago Public Library? We'll start there.
I'm Lori Frumkin. Katie and I work in Children's Services and Family Engagement Department at Chicago Public Library. So we kind of think systematically about services kind of broadly at all of our branches. So initiatives that serve children and families that use our libraries.
I'm Katie Eckert, and I work with Lori doing all of that, but specifically for early learners and their caregivers. So ages 0 to 8 and their parents, their daycare providers, their preschool teachers, all the grown-ups they interact with.
And how long have you both been here?
14 years.
That's
12.
Okay, that's amazing.
We love it.
Yeah, that's a parent.
Yeah.
Lucky them. Okay, so we're just going to kind of focus on the Jump Into Reading campaign, because part of my objective with this year of storytelling.
I'm sorry, do you mind? We've been calling it an initiative as opposed to a campaign. I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
No, don't be sorry. Initiative.
Rather than having to edit a video later.
Yes, I love it. I love
okay.
it. Tell me the rationale for that.
A campaign to us feels like a marketing thing and an awareness campaign, and an initiative involves more. I mean, it is awareness, but it's also a more thoughtful push to have actual, like, tangible results.
Yeah.
Whereas, and like, things we can prove that the initiative address.
And I think for us, a lot of this is like supporting our staff and like kind of how the library looks at it, how our staff looks at it. So it seems like deeper into the system for us.
Yeah. It's like an added layer, like that you're building together.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I love that. So, what is Chicago Public Library's Jump Into Reading initiative? If you had to summarize it, right? And why does it exist?
Sure, yeah, so our Jump Into Reading initiative, it happens at 9 branches right now, but some elements of it actually happen at all of our branches. And basically, in a nutshell, is we're trying at Chicago Public Library to support children and their caregivers and their families as they're learning how to read. Maybe they're struggling with some reading skills. We want to provide that support and be a resource for that. So what it looks like is we just have, the library is a place of books and of literacy and of learning, but we want it to be more specific and more targeted in providing resources and tools that would support that learning to read process more strategically in a library sort of way. So we have one part of it is decodable books, so we've added decodable books to collections and having kind of specific collections that people could be aware of and use. And of course, we're librarians, so we love all the books. So we want to tie a decodable book, which is great at targeting specific skills with learning to read, but also tie that with a book that's supporting comprehension and really rich vocabulary. We've developed a lot of new resources that we could give to parents, share with children, help them tools to help them kind of understand the process and what they can do. We develop programs, so we always do programs, but we're trying new strategies and new methods when kids come to story time, if they come to an after school, a book club, something like that, to kind of build this skill when they're at the library or learn tips for doing at home. So that's kind of
very cool.
That's kind
I'm
of
gonna go get this. Why don't you might talk about this later, but I feel like this is a good time because you just mentioned it. So why don't you model one, like what is this, those resources you just mentioned?
Sure.
Show us one.
So, suppose we call it what do we call it? Pop-it kit? Because it's a pop-it. So we want, the library, people drop in, it's not school, it's not, people don't come every single day, it's always new people, some regulars, but it's a mixed bunch. So we really had to think about, okay, what does it mean to support learning to read when you're at the library as opposed to like school or with tutoring or something like that. So we try to find fun ways, really engaging ways, kind of low lift. So this was one of the kits that we made, like a grab and go kit, so you could take this after a program or just get it from your librarian. And the goal of this one, or the way you could play with this one, is kind of just playing with sounds and words or playing with words in the sentence. So the idea is like, you might segment the sounds in a word as you're pressing the button, so making it kind of a fun experience. Yes.
So like, my dog's name is Jack, so if I'm like, Jack, just like that?
Yep, that's how we...
And like, do the kids pick the words? Do the parents pick the words? Can they both pick the words?
So we give this out with like just like a little insert that we have in English and Spanish, encouraging just the parents that have the kid pick their own word, but maybe encourage, depending on the age of the kid or the skill level, like, choosing, okay, let's try a CBC word, or let's try a word like cats. Because we could break down the sounds in that word pretty easily. So we have like some guidance, but then some open, right? Like a child who's older maybe is up to doing syllables, so maybe they want to do the syllables in their name or something like that. I should say that we partnered on this one with Big City Readers, just because, you know, we learned that sometimes you just want to have a fun kind of practice way of doing things, and so this has been very successful. People have come to the branches, pick this up, and it's colorful, so.
Yeah.
I think that's also one of the key parts of the Jump Into Reading Initiative is the amount of partners across the city that we've been able to pull from, whether they were thought partners helping us develop this at the beginning, or partners helping us do some more like practical day-to-day things in the library, or even partners, we also worked with the Redwood Literacy campaign, helping us work directly with kids who need some of this activity.
Yeah, and I think the partnership with Redwood specifically has been so instrumental with this process, just because, okay, we needed to learn more, right? Like, this is not, we're children's librarians, so we know books. We don't necessarily know how children learn to read and how we could help if there's a struggle. So we needed to learn. And then beyond that, we needed to learn, what does that look like in the library?
Yes.
Like, how can we help kids being in the space that we're at? How can we help parents? How can we reach them? If we want to share this, what words do we use? Like, you know, those specifics. So Redwood was really there for us for that, and it was really
I think
so
that
helpful.
our partnership with Redwood really kicked off the direction we wanted to go with Jump Into Reading. Before that, we knew, actually, it even gave us the name Jump Into Reading. And I think before that, we knew we wanted to serve these patrons and serve their families, but we didn't know, and we knew we didn't want to become reading teachers. So those were the only two things we knew. We didn't know what would make the best sense for a public library where we're seeing people come in and out daily. We don't see the same kids every day, which is why it doesn't make sense for us to be teaching them how to read. It makes sense for us to be supporting them. But what did that support look like? We needed a lot of help, and working with Redwood, I think, really helped us fine-tune and come up with a plan that made sense to us.
Well, I was thrilled when you guys reached out, because I think part of Redwood's mission is to try to make all of this more accessible. And I think what we've learned, similar to what you're saying with partnerships, is it has to look a little bit different for every community, every environment. Like, there's not just one answer for all of this. It involves so many different folks coming together. So I echo that. We've seen the most success with any of our initiatives when there are multiple partners involved, which feels really simple, but I feel like sometimes we do feel like we have to be conscious to remember to reach out for that collaboration. Okay, so we talked about what it is, why it exists. So what are you learning through this initiative as librarians? And what are you learning that you feel like would be really useful for other library systems to hear you talk about? So if they are inspired by this idea and want to try to replicate it in their own community, what are some of the mistakes or challenges they won't have to make or face because of your story?
I think the biggest thing I would tell any library system, big, small, one branch, 80 branches like ours, is you don't have to be an expert in how to learn to read to want to start helping your patrons more explicitly and directly when they're learning to read. We definitely did learn a little bit more about learning to read. We did as we coordinated this program, but our branch librarians are able to do an awful lot of really great work without having become reading teachers themselves. And I think the big question we asked ourselves when we were working with Redwood at the very beginning was, what is the role of a public library? And specifically, what is the role of our public library here in Chicago? That question might look a little different for every public library system, but what is the role in helping children as they're learning to read? We thought a lot about how, as a public library, we're really proud of our early learning services. Our story times are really high quality. They're based in research, and they attract an amazing crowd. We see 100,000 people a year at them. They're amazing.
Wow.
And our school age programs are really strong. We have a lot of great STEM programs, a lot of great creative arts programs for school age kids. But those kids in the middle, we kind of were taking a break from serving them directly while they were learning to read. And then once they could learn to read again, we had great programs for them. Obviously, we served them and we had great books for them, but we weren't giving them that targeted service that we were giving their younger and older siblings. So we thought about what that might look like, but we knew we didn't want to be reading teachers. So I think those are my two thoughts, is you don't have to become a reading teacher yourself, but also what do you want to do then? How do you want to serve these patrons? And our answer for that was looking specifically at developing our collections to be more helpful, adding decodable books into them and making them more accessible, and educating parents and caregivers about what decodable books are. And then also working more with community partners and resources and connecting families and parents to resources. Parents don't always know what they don't know, and so being able to be a place where they can come and trust a librarian to help them find the next step in their journey to help their child learn to read
Yeah.
has been important. And then the last one is just adding more fun programs, like Gloria was saying. That's what I think we're best at and we're really good at. It's also the most fun part of this.
Yeah.
So it's been really, but those three key areas I think are where we landed as our role, and I would recommend that any library take on one or all three of those. But it will look different, I think, for every library system.
Yeah. And just to add on, I think it's also been really nice to see the outcome, to see when a parent comes in or a child comes in, oh, I'm just learning to read, but like not, you know, like how can you help me? Like, what do I need? Or,
Yeah.
you know, and because, you know, we have 80 libraries, we have 80 librarians, and they get those questions.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just so great to have an answer and to say, here, check this out. Here's like some literature you can take home. Check out our website.
Yeah.
You know, here are the resources you need. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, that's our job. So it
Yeah.
feels good to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The other key part of this for us, I know we've already mentioned it, but is partnerships, and I would recommend thinking really creatively about who you can partner with.
Yeah.
Redwood felt like a pretty natural fit to us, but it became even more of a fit the more we learned about Redwood and Redwood Literacy and Redwood schools. But also other partners we've had as we've carried out this work are like influencers online and community organizations serving these kids outside of school.
Yep.
And I think that those are not necessarily the first kinds of organizations you would think of when you think about doing this work, but it took all of that together to be able to build an initiative that really is serving the kinds of and like serving the needs that we saw.
Yeah, yeah. I love that call out. I think partnering in creative places, you get way better results because it gets you. Also, if you only partner with the folks that seem the most obvious.
I feel like now wherever I go, I think about learning to read and how kids learn to read, and I'm like, oh, maybe we could partner. So it's like it's like all I think about now.
Yeah, that's really fun.
And that's natural for the library, right?
Right,
So why
yeah.
not pull from and
Yes. Yeah, and help those folks connect with each other as well. Yeah. Okay. One quick add-on question to that, and you kind of hit on this, but would you say that what you're doing is scalable?
Well, it's funny you asked that because I was thinking about that earlier today, and I think what is hard about answering that question is scaling. I think mostly what we're doing is scalable down. We're a pretty big library system, and so we have to think about things from a central branch that serve 80 branches in 80 very different communities in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we're doing, I think you could be scaled down, and parts of it could be, you could pick and choose. I don't know that I see how this could be scaled much bigger than what we're trying to do right now. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like, yes, it can scale, or sideways maybe it could scale. But I do feel like we're coming at it from a pretty large, systematic look.
Well, and I think scaling down is just as, I think it's has equal value to scaling up, and in some ways scaling down is like what's probably going to be most sustainable.
When we've talked to other library systems, sometimes I get a little bit jealous because I think how nice it would be if we did only have one or two branches and we could really focus very hard on this work in those branches. And so we've had to think about how to scale it. What parts of this are important for the entire city, and what parts of this maybe can be at a few neighborhood branches. So it kind of already is scaled, I guess, in that way.
Yeah.
I also think that there's opportunity for growth for us in so many different directions. It's almost like time is our limiting factor, right? Think about language readers and other who are learning in other languages, thinking about that kind of family literacy piece of like connecting parents to resources, and not just for the kids but for themselves.
And older struggling readers. Right now we're pretty focused on new struggling readers, but we are really excited about the possibility of thinking about how to bring this to teenagers, to adults who need some reading support too.
And some of that we have, like we have, for example, books that will read really high quality chapter books to a child who's maybe struggling to read it on their own, so they get the access, they get that vocabulary, they get that rich language. So some of it we have, but it's a matter of like making it accessible, letting people know, combining it with other parts of the initiative, so like the impact is stronger.
Yeah.
So as you can see, we're excited.
It's very apparent.
Expand.
That's why I wanted to talk to you. My brain is going so fast because, like you said, as you're talking, I'm imagining all the different places you could grow. So it almost sounds like, in the spirit of scaling down and figuring out what are the pieces you want to grow, and what are the pieces that you want to actually shrink and individualize and be efficient with. You don't have to replicate everything at every branch.
And being effective with. I think that's another piece that's really important to us is knowing that we're taking on, whether it's a huge part of a project or a small part, that it's going to be effective. Because it's not worth it if it's a big and exciting piece if it's not going to, actually be helping kids.
Yeah.
I think something else that has been so interesting for Katie and I as we're kind of going down this journey is to having staff and librarians understand it and embrace it. It's not, I didn't learn this in library school, right?
Yeah.
I feel like some teachers didn't even learn it in their schooling,
Yeah.
but it's so important. So that has been a big piece. And I wouldn't say it was not challenging in a good way. We had to, do multiple professional development workshops with staff and we had to learn, and we're continuously learning, and it's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because I do think that staff knowledge and staff sharing these ideas, that's where really the magic happens, when you're out in the community and this child and this parent are talking to their librarian and they're getting this information, but the staff need that information. So that has been,
And they really are taking it and running with it. They're doing such creative things in their branches. They're having their own beginning reader book clubs where they're adding more phonological activities to them. One branch is talking about having a book buddies program where they have teen volunteers listen as the children read aloud to them to let them practice reading skills with a teenager, which feels a little more cooler. So it's been really nice. And our librarian said before we started doing this that they're so grateful for these trainings because all the time they get parents coming in saying, my child's in first grade, what should they read? And they're very good at answering that question in terms of interest level on books, but now they can also answer that question by saying, well, what kind of help do you need? Look at all these options I have for you, which is really nice.
Yeah. Okay, what is next for CPL and Jump Into Reading? Kind of what, you've gotten this thing off the ground, kind of in this last, 6 months, 9 months? And now what is what's the thing you're looking towards next? And not that you're committing to that, but what are some of the things that are on the horizon for where this is going next?
I mean, right now we have the kind of focused initiative at about 9 branches. And patrons could get these kits we give out system-wide, and they could definitely get some of these books that are focused in those branches. You could still put them on hold and get them on the other branches. But what we really want to do is expand, and branches want to have it too, so we're going to expand in the next few months to more branches. So there'll be more kind of special collections of these types of books and more programming happening. More signs up there that just give people the information they need. So I think we're growing within our system. And I think beyond that, we're going to look at some of these kind of being responsive to the community of what kind of questions that they're asking, being able to answer what we talked about before. Okay, my child's in 4th grade but still struggling. What specific books are there for that? Or, the patrons at this branch are mostly speaking Spanish. We need some decodable books in Spanish. Those kind of things are kind of, that's I think where we're going, kind of building the program itself and then broadening and just expanding what we do.
The user access.
Yeah.
And I think also just continued focus on awareness that this initiative exists, and that parents can trust the library as a place to come and really help them navigate some of these questions.
How on that note, how do you feel like the word is getting out? What are the platforms you're using to let communities know this is accessible? Because it's new, right? And maybe not always super understandable by name alone, right? So how are you getting the word out about it? And then what is the response that you're seeing?
I think with the what we've been calling the pilot with the 9 branches, the word was getting out strictly by a librarian interactions with patrons. And we did that partially because we wanted to get some response on the tools we were making before we made it widely available. But we also have been, because we partnered with an influencer, we've been able to get her following aware of the grab and go kits, which hopefully will get them in the door. And then, to be honest, I think we're excited about thinking about marketing this more heavily as it leaves the pilot stage and becomes something that we're committed to doing longer.
It was kind of in its incubation period, which makes a lot of sense. Because you're not really looking to another library system as a model right now. You kind of tried to find that instead of creating something from the ground up, and then you kind of landed at Tell me a little bit about that. How I think we started. You did tell me why it exists, but tell me a little bit about how you looked and you didn't find anything.
Yeah, I think when we first started thinking about kind of this area of growth for the library, I think we were thinking of kind of what kids need and where are they getting for that information and how can we support that. And so of course we looked to our peer organizations, and there's some of this going on, elements of it going on for sure, that the idea of sharing great books with kids is not new to us, but this specific, honestly, it wasn't happening a lot in libraries. This is not something,
or at least not that we reached out to dozens of libraries, And there are definitely library branches that have, or library systems that have small decodable collections, but they might be a 1 or 2 branch system. So we got some great information from them about how they shelved them, but we couldn't quite figure out what that meant for our large system.
I think what we learned more is that people are super interested
Yes.
in it, right? When we're like, are you doing this? They're like, no, but tell me more, you know?
Yes.
Which is exciting. It means we were all on the same pace.
Yeah.
Somebody just had to kind of get the ball rolling and get started.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it'll be interesting to see when you reach back out to those people to see, for you to share the progress you've made, and then also maybe be surprised to hear, if that even sparked some conversation, right?
Definitely.
Even if you haven't been tracking since then. Okay, cool. Okay, and I don't know if we talked about this. Like, how can the community support? Like, what are the things you need from the Chicago community to support this initiative?
I think the biggest thing is come use the books, come to the programs, tell your children's classmates about the programs, tell your children's classmates' parents about this books you found at the library. Just general community support by using it and spreading the word would be really helpful.
Yeah, I would just come on down and and share your needs, right? Like our goal is to be responsive to the community. So the more we know and the more we see what is needed out there, we're gonna meet it. So
how do folks reach out? Is it, if they just jump into reading, is that kind of the best place for people to find the contact information? Like, let's say someone hears about your programs from a friend at school, wants to know more, and they just go to your main website, or what's like the easiest thing for someone to remember?
I think there's 2 ways to do it. If they want information for their child, the best place to go is probably their own local library branch. I mean, even if that branch doesn't have a decodable collection yet, they do have a children's librarian who's aware of this initiative and knowledgeable about it and can help them place books on hold or answer questions, or send them to one of those branches that does have a more robust collection. But we do have a detailed website that has all of this information online, including blog posts from Redwood about what happens in your brain when you're learning to read, and also how to use decodable books. That's really invaluable, especially if you happen to go to the library on a day the children's librarian is off and you might need a little more guidance. And that website also has some really great resources. And if a person is coming to the library because they want to know more about jump into reading to become a partner with us for it, they can talk to the children's librarian who will give them our contact info.
Okay. So you two are kind of the key folks to talk to outside of local library. You have kind of talked about this throughout, but just anything else you want to say? I mean, I feel like we kind of covered partnerships, but anything else on like how your partnership with Redwood or others were this getting off the ground in a way that didn't feel overwhelming?
Yeah, I would say it was really that blend of like that background information that we needed in order to really serve our patrons effectively. We wanted it to be research, but we're not going to just like throw anything out there, right? We needed it to be research based. We needed it to be clear and we see patrons all walks of life, all ages, all education levels. So pulling some of that, rather, if I'm being honest, like complex information about the brain and how you learn to read and what the parent can do and what teachers can do and what is an IEP, all of these things that are very complicated, but pulling that down into language and resources that are really accessible. That's we really relied on Redwood and other partners to do that, because they, you at Redwood, you've done that for years and years and years. You're always learning the new information, always reading the research, the new articles. We've started, but we don't have the years of experience, and we don't have that kind of knowledge you get from just being an expert in the field. So I think that was just huge for us. And I think then thinking about it in the library context, it's new. It's new for us, it's new in the field. So just thinking about, this space, what can this space do, was really, I think when I first called you, I was like, we want to do this. What do you like? I had, we didn't even have a starting point, right? So then we got our starting point and we grew. And whether it was like figuring out little words that would make parents understand or make caregivers understand what's happening when their child can't decode a word, right? From that to like choosing book titles. Libraries don't, I think more and more they are, but decodables really haven't been seen in libraries before this very much at all. And if they are, it's like you have to have certain language to, we don't want to just throw a decodable at somebody, right?
I think when we first started, we had librarians who were like, oh, I can add a decodable to my story time, and we had to
Yeah.
walk it back and really take some time
Yes.
to do
Yeah,
some
like
PD
this
about
is,
what.
you know,
Not for
normally
story
we wouldn't
time.
read. Yeah, not story time.
And the difference between how both of those things are really important to becoming a reader.
Yes.
The high quality, engaging books that you read in the story time are just as important as decodable, but they serve two different purposes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I asked you to have one question for me. Do you have any questions for me?
One question I was kind of thinking about, and we always think about here, is like that love of reading, that joy of reading, and building lifelong readers. We're always, like, that's kind of always our end game, right? Any
Right.
project, any initiative, we're like, okay, we're building lifelong learners. We're getting joy in reading. So I just wanted to ask, like, you know, what, as you think about learning to read specifically, how do you balance that with like just the joy that comes with reading?
It's a great question. You know, I'm walking through this now as a parent, right? When I started as a professional in this field, and now I'm walking with my daughter through a pretty significant learning difference that just makes decoding really tricky for her. And so this is something I've thought a lot about now through that parent lens. And I think really starting to use language around, like, whenever I talk about reading now, I talk about, you know, eye reading and ear reading, and just really starting, you know, to continue the conversation of broadening, like reading in a lot of ways now in this digital age that we live in is just the new information. And that can come through podcasts, it can come through documentaries, it can come through audiobooks, it can come through an adult reading aloud to you. And I think by widening that definition, which especially for, you know, like my kids are Generation Alpha, which one of the primary predictors of Generation Alpha is that they're going to, which I don't think surprises any of us, they're going to be extremely tech savvy and reliant, and thinking about how do we utilize the good aspects of technology to widen that entry point to reading, which is just that the joy of learning, right? The joy of taking in new information, having your background knowledge expanded, your worldview expand. So I'm thinking a lot these days about assistive technology and how for students with learning differences, since that's Redwood's primary focus, but really for any student who, for, you know, if they've had just a really disrupted education, if they've had some traumatic events or a sickness that's taking them out of the classroom for a season, kids who feel behind or who are behind in their independent foundational literacy skills, the role of assistive technology in very quickly bridging that gap for them, so that it's a bridge that allows them to access information at their cognitive level and to express information that they have to express before those independent foundational skills are there. And I think that's really exciting. And thinking just about empowering young people, right, and helping them, and you know, helping them access the information that they need in a way that is best for them, right? I think we can all celebrate that. That's like what we're trying to do as educators or librarians. Like, it's going to be joyful if it's natural and working for them, not if it's asking them to do something that's extremely difficult for them to do. So that go ahead.
I love that. One of the other thought partners that we did not mention yet, a colleague of ours who is a librarian in Colorado, she did a training for our librarians, and she said that she kind of lives by the philosophy there is no joy of reading without being able to read, which is so true. But while you're learning to read, having all of these other opportunities to engage with content does still bring you the joy while you're still on that journey.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you guys both so much. This has been lovely, and I don't have any other sort of graceful end.
No,
So I'll probably just have it end.
Well, we always learn so much from you,
Yeah.
even just like here right now. So thank you for this and for everything.
Yeah, likewise.